Previously on the Sugar Baby Confessionals.
You know, it turns me on how much favorite person gets aroused when I've been with someone else. I mean, in the moment, I was kind of half thinking like, oh, I'm so tired, just let me sleep. But, you know, after about 5 minutes of having skin on skin, you're like, ooh, okay. Favorite person and I, we don't take each other for granted anymore. He's larger than any other lover I've ever been with. I call it porn cock. You should counter with a figure that is double what he suggested. I have only ever quadrupled. I want to be exclusive with the Brit. If Mankini gets in touch with me and wants to set up another meeting, I wouldn't want to see him. This is the direction that my heart is telling me to go in. And if it turns out that something goes bad, I'll just have to deal with the consequences.
Last week, Ruby and I talked about cash. Ruby's becoming steadily less attached to the idea of making the Brit pay for her time. She tells me FP is worried about the implications of this. As long as she's being paid, then it's a job. No emotional entanglements. But in this evolved universe, we're not afraid of emotions or entanglements, right? Madeleine certainly sees it as a job. She has no dewy-eyed illusions about it. I caught up with her to see how she was faring. In our second cash-themed episode, Pound Cake 2.
Ruby and I had a nice little chat about the money.
We begin by talking about Ruby's decision to go exclusive with the Brit.
I was quite surprised. I was really shocked by that.
Some of them really want that whole kind of girlfriend experience, and they want one person, and I think it's a really interesting concept that some of them are open to developing a long-term relationship this way. The first time I saw it, open to LTR, and I was like, what the hell does that mean? I looked it up and I went, what? This is such an odd way to develop a relationship with somebody. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, in my opinion, there's really nothing hidden.
It is interesting. I just thought she would kind of be the last person to do that, because she seems so much more about the sort of process of it. And it was interesting talking about it in the context of the cash episode, because with the Brit, she'd kind of gone substantially less with the money than she had.
Okay, so that was my next question, was really she had. Okay. She must enjoy him.
Yeah, she was saying that she had 2 hours of sleep because they'd had sex for 10 hours straight, basically. She said that she'd had like cat naps in between.
Wow.
I'm such a worrywart anyway. I worry about everything. I worry about my friends in any situation. But if there's something I can worry about, I'll worry about it, right? I was just thinking to myself, well, she really seems to like this guy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggle to understand how it can't bleed into the other aspects of your life. It's definitely not about the cash, because he's paying her, I think, half of the sort of, I guess, what the going rate is.
Maths is not my strong point, as you may have guessed by now. It wasn't less than half, it was triple rather than quadruple what he originally offered her. Just thought I'd clarify that for the maths fundies out there.
So that she's already made a concession for him there.
Well, I would really have to talk to her and get her thoughts on it. And she's in a very different situation than I am. So, I mean, it's a little bit concerning, but I do know that she has a really good sense of control about managing her feelings and cutting things off when they become too intense and sort of start to intrude on her personal life. And that kind of thing.
Because I said, doesn't favorite person, just going by the basic man model, if you say to them, I've just spent 10 hours being fucked within an inch of my life and, I had the greatest time ever, that's not going to fill them with joy, right?
10 hours is a long time. I don't know if the roles were reversed and it were me and we were, in that situation, I don't know that being away for 10 hours would really be, or obviously longer, would be all that comfortable. I think he would be like really super antsy about it. But because of the way that our situation is set up, and, I go home to my house and he goes home to his, he's just dying to hear the story, whatever it is. And, he would be even happier if he could see it. But since he can't, he just wants to hear it. And it does make him really very happy. Very, very happy. Favorite person and the Marquis have a slightly different but similar set of sexual needs. And so maybe it does, for favorite person, fill him with some level of joy. It's different. It's a different need. It's a different craving. In a very vanilla sense, there's a desire to know that other people find your mate attractive, your friends approve of who you're with. And in a hot wifing scenario, which is what we're kind of talking about, it's a much more exaggerated version of that. It is a much greater desire to know, to see that. And I think that both favorite person and the Marquis have this sense that not only is my partner the luxury that the man who has everything buys for himself, but also I get to have that for free.
What could I need for a man so painfully shy?
We're going to talk about it in the feminist episode, but some people would say that's kind of like being objectified in the purest sense of the word, I guess. You're kind of like the accessory or the object.
I mean, yes, to a certain extent, that's probably true. But there's something about women like myself and Ruby that these men aren't finding out in the world.
Yes.
I sent you guys that message about a friend of mine who had created a profile on the site, no picture, no information, 52 emails from women.
Wow. Huh?
And I don't even want to say desperately seeking his money, because I don't think that's true for all of them. And in a lot of cases, I think that there are women who are desperately seeking it because they need it. And I think that that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But some of them don't realize that they deserve any better. And in that case, I think it's really objectification.
Yes.
We'll deal with the objectification issue in more depth in the feminism episode. But I do find it interesting that Madeleine is drawing a very clear line in the sand between herself and the women who do this because they need the money desperately.
With people like us, with women like us, I think that there's a value in what women with our level of education, women with our level of, or with a quality of something to say, women who bring to the table what we bring to the table really are a luxury. And the idea that we're not bringing emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And, we have some, we're just not bringing it to this particular party. I have plenty.
Yeah.
I'm just not bringing it today.
It's packed away. It's in the loft.
That's right. We've had enough life experience to understand that there are boundaries created by this cash exchange, by this transaction. If he's married, if he's really into his job, if he wants you to send him a text once a week, or he doesn't ever want to hear from you during the week, that's the luxury that he's paying for, and that's totally fine. And in exchange, what you're getting is this tremendous dollar amount, but also you're being treated like a queen. Actually, I really hate when they say, I'll treat you like a princess. No, you can treat me like a goddess.
Cash is involved. There's that thing about how if you're buying something, if you're putting a value on something and it's a high value, then obviously you're going to take it more seriously. How does it go so wrong if it can be so right for you and Ruby?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a stigma placed on it. And I mean, for her, she has a partner who is very much in sync with her about why she's doing it. I mean, I can't speak for her, but that's my perception. And for me, it seems to work for me and the Marquis in our fantasy life.
Yeah, it augments it, doesn't it?
Yes.
It kind of augments your pre-existing.
And from a financial perspective, obviously it works for me.
Yeah.
were speculating about Ruby's thoughts and feelings, which is the prerogative of old friends, not journalists. But I'm interested in how Madeleine sees herself reflected in the mirror of Ruby's relationship with FP. I wonder if she notices flaws, if that's what they are, in hers in the Marquis setup. And is this image of perfection being projected by Ruby and FP 100% accurate? After all, we can't really know the full implications of this sugar baby experiment until it's played itself out.
When we were texting, you were talking about issues with the Marquis. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So the Marquis has this marriage, and I think I've explained this to you before, where his wife does not have the same sexual appetites that he has, and I'm not entirely sure when that started or if it's always sort of been that way. She's never been sexual, and then she's always sort of been vanilla, but I think there's been quantity where there is much less quantity now.
Yeah.
And so it is less than satisfactory for him on both of those levels. Apart from that, she's a good person and she's a mother of his children, and he loves her. So he doesn't feel that lack of a good sex life is a reason to get a divorce from somebody you've been with for 25 years. And I'm not going to try to tell him otherwise. So I think, in fact, I know that one of the reasons that the Marquis blows a little hot and cold with me is because he's had some of these outside relationships before. I'm guessing something to the tune of 4 or 5 over 25 years. But if you asked him and he trusted you, he would tell you that he's only ever loved 2 women in his life, his wife and his mother, and then me.
Right, okay. So you are in there. You're in the Penelope of women in his orbit, who he actually does love on some level. You were quite upset the other day, though, it seemed.
Madeleine had been texting Ruby and I with news of something the Marquis had done that had hurt her deeply. She was talking about how, in her words, the Marquis was acting all crazy and weird-ass. She said, "We talked about it on Friday and he said the only difference he saw, now that he'd been promoted, was that he felt we were moving towards being just friends." Ruby says, "Vomit." Madeleine, "Okay, so I want to die. I tell him that he can't be texting me good morning and good night every day because I don't have friends who do that. We suggest new boundaries." Then she replied, "So fast forward to yesterday, he's got a new role. I'm trying to get his phone to talk to the server so he can get his email." In the course of trying to sort out his phone, she went into his Gmail account, which she'd set up to make sure all his contacts were backed up. It would seem that the Marquis is a bit of a Luddite when it comes to technological things. And Madeleine is his go-to girl Friday. She says, "He's been emailing a shit ton of people from Craigslist for like 3 months about all sorts of fucked up shit that I totally would have accepted, but he didn't tell me about. And he couldn't respond to their replies because he's too stupid to know how his phone works. It totally taints the way I see/saw us." She goes on, "There are certain people I can't be for him. I can't be the guy who wants to fuck his wife. I can't be the guy who wants to fuck him, but I don't begrudge his desires for that either, and I'm really sad about it. What's really killing me is that I loved how open and honest everything was. Now I have to accept that it wasn't. I had this real, intimate relationship for the first time in my whole life, and he just had some real-life pussy, as opposed to the on-the-phone kind." Ruby sends her a crying face emoji and says, "Have you two spoken about all this?" But it doesn't seem they have. The Marquis's done other things that are questionable. For example, he sends out pictures of his wife to strangers, just so that he can hear them talking about her, about wanting to fuck her. He does it without her knowledge. Even Madeleine admits that this is dodgy behavior, and she is very forgiving of his peccadillos. She signs off with, "I'm not sure he really understands how fucked up it is."
And tonight we'll forget lonesome longing.
Even after all that, by the time we talk today, she's in a much better frame of mind, and they've reconciled.
We have this very open, honest relationship, and I guess when we have done a lot of things sexually. And I had said to him a million times, like, the thing that I love most about us is that there's just no secrets. I don't know everything that goes on in his home life, and that's okay with me. I don't need to. But between us, there's no secrets. We also work together, and I'm something of the technical person on site, and he's really not. So they had handed me his cell phone to get it to communicate with the server because he needed to receive email, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working. I have no idea why. Still to this day, I have no idea why. It works now though. But in order to try to make it work, I was going to do a hard reset, and I logged into the Gmail account that I had set up for him to back up all his contacts, and I see all of these emails from the casual encounter section of Craigslist.
Oh,
like
God.
And hindsight being what it is, they were all unread. Every single one of them was unread. Basically because he really didn't understand that, like, he had sent emails out and all of these people had responded and he didn't really know how to get to them.
So it wasn't like he'd refrained from looking at them. It's like he just couldn't figure it out.
He had no idea that any of these people had responded to him, but I was livid. We'd had a conversation about not finding people through Craigslist because we'd tried before. We'd had one kind of successful person. He was really cool, but everybody else seemed kind of fake, and I didn't really feel like there was a good vetting process for them, and I didn't like it.
Well, it's renowned, isn't it, for being chock full of dodgy characters.
There's a lot of photo phishing, and as far as I'm concerned, you're pretty lucky to get photos of the two of us. So I was not thrilled at all. But on top of that, like, some of it was, again, some pretty dodgy shit.
Like what? I
And
mean,
just, some of his dodgier fantasies. And
like, I'm only asking because it's interesting to know what you would kind of balk at. You already seem to be kind of looking after him in certain senses and keeping him from his sort of darker tendencies.
Actually, you know what? The one woman, I think she said something about, like, letting him come all over her or something. And that's not even a dark fantasy. That's just a thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's a thing that people do.
Yeah.
And he has a real difficulty doing that with me. At this point, like, I know for him that that's like a sign of disrespect. So looking back on it now, like, I know that there are certain things that he can't do with me or doesn't always feel like he can do with me because it's me, because of his feelings for me. So I think, given that at the time, like, that is sort of where he got tripped up a little. Like, there were things that he was trying to keep from hurting me, but doing that hurts me.
Yeah. Well, the dishonesty thing.
Right.
I mean, I think it's like a pillar of this kind of relationship, because if you can't hold yourselves together through the honesty, then what holds you together?
You have to understand the kind of person that the Marquis is. He doesn't view that as dishonest, which I disagree with. And I think pretty much everybody who believes that lies by omission are a thing would totally disagree with.
Well, it's not strictly omission because you had a conversation about Craigslist. So that is actual deceit because you had the conversation and then he went and broke that kind of agreement, I guess. I suppose in his mind he's rationalizing by saying, if I don't tell you, did it really happen?
It's not even that. His perception of the situation was that I wouldn't want to know that he was reaching out for X, that I wouldn't want to know that he was doing Y. Like,
it sounds like he just wants to do the least emotional heavy lifting that he can possibly do. He doesn't want to hurt you by implying that there's something that he can't do with you. Because in some ways, he might think you might see that as a kind of slight against you.
I do. I do see it as a slight. I can see how he would get there.
You want him to come all over you. That's
well, it's not that. It's just that of all of the things that we've discussed, like, there's never been a time where I've said, I can't even believe that you would want to do that.
Yeah.
Like, those words have never come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And maybe they would for somebody that I cared about less. Maybe I'd be like, ew, no. But that's not the case here. I've never been so angry at somebody in my whole life that it took me a week to talk to them.
How did you address it? Like the first time you spoke to him? I mean, when after you discovered it?
The second I saw him, I started screaming. I was so mad. And then he kind of freaked out because we were at work. I have no sense of time and place sometimes. I was so angry I thought I was going to throw up. So it needed to be dealt with right then and there. And then after that, I was sort of heartbroken. Once I got a little distance from it and I started to have some, like I spoke to him and he sort of explained to me why that happened the way it happened, at least in his mind. He explained to me how he got there and why. And then he basically had me disconnect his email account, which is hysterical. Like he was like, just take it away. I don't even want access to it anymore. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I am enraged, I am enraged, I am enraged. Oh. You can go on your own. Go. You can go on your own.
It seems like technology is definitely a liability for him. I mean, you were saying, again, protecting him, looking out for him. You were saying in the text that because he has so little idea of how to work these things and he wasn't sort of monitoring where the emails were appearing and, you know, I mean, his wife or his kids could have opened up his phone for whatever reason and seen these things and been upset by them.
Right. Well, that was the thing is like, he was like, just take it away. I don't even want it. Take
Burn
it. I don't want to be able to do this. And it was sort of like his admission of like, you know, or admission of take this away from me. I don't even want this capability. And I was like, well,
what is this witchcraft?
Yeah, right? It was sort of his like relinquishment of control here. Like, take this away from me.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible enough to handle it.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
I can drive a car and I can run an excavator and I can manage a huge building project, like a $70 million building project, but I cannot manage my own sexual appetite.
How did it end up? I mean, how did he, are you guys reconciled?
We're managing. I'm not really sure how things are going to work from here. I'm not suffering from an enormous trust issue at the moment, which is how I thought it was going to be.
I am enraged, I am enraged, I am enraged. Oh. You can go on your own. Go. You can go on your own. Go. You can go on your own. Go.
I do report directly to him now, which was not true at the beginning of this.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So your direct line manager was promoted. Is that right?
Oh. My direct line manager was fired.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And Marquis was moved into his place, and now I report to him directly.
There's no buffer zone anymore.
At work, we don't require one. This particular sort of blow up notwithstanding, he is always really good about the difference between work and personal, but I'm also pretty good about it. It doesn't matter what happens between the two of us. I would never want to affect him professionally, and I don't think he would ever want that for me either. Like, even last week when I was so angry at him, like, I was setting stuff up for him and trying to do things to make him successful at his new position. Like, I know many people who would have been, fuck that, and been spiteful just because they were pissed. So we're really not those kind of people. On the other hand, and this is the big thing, when you have a situation like this where there's an inner office relationship, it's his reputation, both of our reputations, but really like the one that's at stake here is his, because he has so much further to fall. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, when something like this happens and people find out, the person to go is the one who's less valuable, and that's me.
So much further to fall? Why more so than her? Yes, Marky has a family, so I guess in that sense more people would be impacted than in Madeleine's case, but her reputation, her career would also be considerably affected. In fact, More so, probably. She's the one who, by her own admission, would be more likely to be fired, being the less valuable employee. So she would, in fact, lose out greatly on both a personal and a professional level.
So both of us have like a real stake in that, and that is the big issue to me.
How do you keep it a secret in the off? Because it sounds like it's been going on for a long time, and
I'm absolutely sure that everybody that I work with thinks that I'm sleeping with everybody on site. I'm the only woman. There's another administrative woman in the office, but she doesn't ever go out onto the work site. So beyond that, it's me and 167 men. So wow. I have no doubt that they're all accusing each other of sleeping with me, or accusing me of sleeping with all of them behind my back. But he and I have a really good methodology for sort of functioning in a friendly way when we're at work together.
Right. Do you have like code words and secret handshakes and...
No. It's like we don't send emails back and forth. I don't make a big deal out of it when he comes into the office. Like I barely even look up.
Yeah.
And sort of vice versa. And ironically, the other woman that I work with, I would have sworn when I first started there that she was sleeping with him. And
how do you know she wasn't?
Well, I have a pretty clear sense of his taste at this point, but also like she's real good friends with his wife. I just one of the things that he's real worried about is this woman finding out about us because she will tell his wife.
His wife doesn't mind him sort of exercising his appetites outside of the marriage, but yet she doesn't want to know anything about it. Is that the case?
The thing about her is if you were sleeping with him, you would not act like you needed him every second of the day in the office. Oh, where's the Marquis? Is he coming in? I wonder why he's not here yet. Oh, Marquis, pay attention to me. I need to throw candy at him right now. That's what she does. That's the kind of person she was. Or is.
Huh? Throw candy at him? Is this some new kink I'm not aware of?
But his wife, she doesn't know at all. So she hasn't sort of tested, she hasn't given permission. I mean, that seems odd, considering that she obviously must know that he has... this high libido.
I will never, as long as I live, understand this. I understand that you marry someone in your 20s and they're gorgeous. You as a woman hit your 40s and you have like this super high libido and maybe his has crashed a little bit and then you both sort of taper off together maybe.
Yeah.
Not this couple. He's still gorgeous. She's not aging nearly as well as he is, but she's still a pretty beautiful woman. And she's only interested in having sex maybe once a month. You have to get the idea that your husband with the super high sex drive is gonna want to look elsewhere. You have to.
I asked Ruby about if she ever sort of felt in any sense kind of culpable in the deception if the sugar daddies that she's with haven't told their wives, if they're sort of going behind their backs. How do you feel about that?
I prefer when their wives know, because at least you have the option to say yay or nay or be involved or whatever. I think that if you're a sugar baby in that situation, it really has nothing to do with you, what's gone on in their marriage that's brought a man to that point. And I've been with enough married men at this point to know, as a sugar baby and or not, when a man decides that he's going to cheat on his wife, they have something to work out that they have chosen not to, or whatever reason. And it's unfortunate, but if we go back to the Marquis, I guess at some point he used to fight not getting laid more than once a month, and now he's stopped. And whether he's stopped because it's not worth the argument, it's not worth seeing her cry, or because of me or someone previous to me or whatever, or because he has access to pornography, who knows? But whatever reason he stopped, at some point you would have expected her to say, I wonder why there's no fight anymore.
I find this speculation about the Marquis's wife to be very revealing. Although Madeleine is sympathetic, I can tell she's trying not to think too hard about this other woman, the one who should know her husband better than anyone. Madeleine is refusing to see the obvious similarities in their situations. It's like she's saying, a man like this, if you don't know, then you don't want to know. Yet we were just talking about his betrayal of her and how much of a surprise it was, and how hurtful that he's clearly been trying to have sex with multiple other people behind her back. But to her, it's his wife who isn't, in Madeleine's mind, handling him properly. Is she willfully refusing to face the facts? I'm starting to think this guy must have some serious sex mojo to bamboozle a woman as smart as Madeleine.
So you haven't quite resolved it yet, is that the case? Is it kind of still simmering between you, or have you managed to talk it out so that you both, you have a clear idea of where he is, or do you just think, I'm not sure what's going to happen from now on?
Well, from a, I'm using air quotes, betrayal standpoint, we've talked that out. We're not going to go any further in conversation with that. Like, he knows what I expect of him.
Yeah.
And I know that he expects me to not like talk about it for hours on end.
Hit a wall.
If you could see the man's head, you would know exactly what wall I'm talking about too. Like, I adore him. I love him to pieces. But I've reached a point now where I know sort of how much talking I'm going to get out of him before he just shuts down. And I'm fine with that.
Madeleine seems to look out for the Marquis, keeping him out of trouble. Privately, I dread to think what sort of things the man would get up to if not for her patiently explaining to him why such and such a kink would be too risky. But in light of the fact that he's still trying to see people outside of their arrangement, and apparently suggesting quite extreme things to these strangers, I worry that any influence she has is imagined. Anyway, I ask her to expand on where she thinks she's helped to redirect his more out there fantasies.
We share all sorts of fantasies, some that are just meant to stay between us and some that can be brought to life, and we talk it out and we know the difference most of the time, and sometimes I have to say, no, Marky, we can't do that. That's not healthy.
That's a bridge too far.
That's exactly it. Like, sometimes Marky can't get there. He's very excited and his primitive brain takes over and he just can't see the long-term effect of why that would be bad.
Whoa, what is an example of that?
You're going to have to erase this. I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to erase this.
Good?
No, one of his sons.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so when the Marquis was his son's age, he played semi-professional football. His son plays college football. They are exactly alike. So in his very rich fantasy life, and he's got this great imagination, he has this fantasy about being a young man seducing me, an older woman.
Revolving your relationship. But it's odd to think that he sort of can't differentiate between himself and his son is the only way he can do that.
His middle son really is him. I mean, he just is. And I know it. And like, in his mind, he just wants to see me get fucked by his son. That's how hot he thinks I am, that his son should have that experience. My boy should not go through life without
experiencing
fucking somebody as hot as you.
Yeah.
Like, it's weirdly bizarro hot. But I just said to him, like, and he's brought up a whole bunch of times. I'm like, I love that you think that. We can talk about it all you want. But I said, long term, in the unlikely event that your wife finds out about this, that can never happen. Like, how do you explain that to him? What if he repeats it to her?
Yeah.
Nobody wins. It's just unhealthy. You can't do it.
I'm not even going to touch the incestuous elements of this fantasy or how he seems to be pressurizing Madeleine to actually fulfill it. But even leaving that aside, this guy is sounding dangerously narcissistic.
Why doesn't he just borrow his kid's football jacket?
He's very visual, and it's, you know, when he gets in that zone, and I don't know if you've ever read anything on it, like, sex is kind of gross. When we're aroused, we don't find things as disgusting as we would find them normally.
Yeah.
I don't know if that applies to things like spiders, but it certainly applies to certain levels of action. So when he gets in that mindset, like you can talk to him a little bit about it. I could talk to him a little bit about it when he's like not super aroused, but when he is, I can't even tell him. Everything that he thinks of has to happen. And I'm like, okay, I gotta wait for you to for the testosterone to calm down and then explain why it can't.
Well, I'm glad it didn't involve wildlife of any kind.
Mm-mm. No, I mean, because if it involved a unicorn, I might be in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, who wouldn't?
We turn to the idea of how lies affect your life and relationships.
Despite the fact that you have integrity in the way that you're carrying out your relationship with the Marquis, because he's engaged in deceiving his wife, I've observed with people what happens when you have one big lie in your life, if you know what I mean. Once the sort of barrier of your integrity has been breached, it's so much easier to go, well, one little lie won't hurt over here, and one little lie won't hurt over there. Whereas, obviously Ruby is very lucky in that she and her partner have been able to be 100% honest with each other the whole way through. But what I worry about with her is that something will creep in.
Wow. This is a really long, rambling question. I hope I get to the point soon.
Maybe she has a really good night with the Brit and something super romantic happens and she decides to keep it from favorite person. Like, he doesn't need to know that I had a certain feeling at this moment. I'll just leave that bit out. And then the next week something else and something else and something else. Seriously?
The question's still going. Is it a question for Madeleine? Is it a comment on Ruby's relationship? If it is, then it's not the neatest segue I've ever done.
That's, and I'm talking about it from his perspective as well, because he's engaged in the same stuff. He's also seeing a young woman who we're referring to as Lolita, because she's so much younger.
Nice.
and I just worry that these little accumulated omissions would end up adding up to something big, something hurtful.
I honestly believe that there's not like an accumulation of omissions. There's just one gigantic omission. I mean, it's not one, it's a whole bunch of stupid emails, but I equate it to one thing. Like, it's this one stupid act that just drives me absolutely out of my mind. But I can definitely see how that would happen. And you're right to be concerned. I know for Ruby in particular, I've seen her, or, we've discussed her actively saying, this has become a little too intense for me and I need to take a giant step back.
I know, I must say, the thing about her is that she's one of the smartest people I know when it comes to self-examination and knowing exactly what is going on with her, which I really envy, because I certainly don't have that. That's why, she does kind of inspire confidence. I'm just talking about there's some things that you just can't foresee, human emotion is a complex thing, isn't it?
I will tell you from my own experience, and you'd asked me before about the hot and cold and not really, like, when you say not really being self-aware. So the one day the Marquis tells me that he loves me and I'm sort of bowled over. And then literally the next week, I'm like, I don't even know where he is. Like, he's being so cold with me. And he's told me from day one, like, I'm never leaving my wife. I love my family, blah, blah, blah. And I've never asked him to. It's not what I'm looking for him to do. And he's made it very clear it's not what he wants. And I would never ask him to do something he doesn't want to do. And because I've been down that road before, it sucks and it's painful and I'm not doing it again. So it's, a week and a half later, I sat him down and I said, I don't understand. You're killing me because you tell me you love me and now you can barely talk to me. And he looks at me and goes, I can't leave my wife. I'm like, I'm not asking you to. And he said, yeah, but I was trying to figure out how. Like, you have to know yourself and you have to be able to, it never occurred to him to talk to me about that.
Yeah.
So you have to be in touch with yourself. And this is where Ruby and favorite person have it locked. Like, you have to be able to talk to your partner.
Tell me some sugar daddy stories. I know you were also kind of feeling a bit bummed because you hadn't had any good prospects kind of on the on the line.
Well, actually, if you give me 2 seconds, I need to read one from Octocock. I was supposed to go out with him last night, and his father had a heart attack. He was just explaining to me about what his father eats. So I guess he's in critical condition, but Octocock is still my favorite. The problem with Octocock, and I hate to say it this way, is that he is not super wealthy. Like I've mentioned to you, he and I have never really talked money. Money just shows up, but it's not like a big amount. And I would never ask him for a big amount because I just like him, and he gives me what he gives me.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but he's so much fun. And I'm so disappointed he wasn't able to come over come up here last night.
Because this is the cash episode, I did ask Ruby, and she told me exactly what the amounts are. Like, what is your going rate?
With Octocock, it's $1,200 a month,
right.
But I only see him like twice.
Yeah.
The rest of them, it's basically $1,000 per date.
That's a lot of money.
The truth is, though, I'm not really seeing anybody right now.
Right. That's because you've weeded out all the oddballs.
And they set the tone, not me, in terms of money. Right. They really, the price was set for me. I just sort of went with it.
Oh. You don't have, because Ruby had a whole system. She said that you'd send her an article where it was like, always double whatever it is they offer. So make them offer an amount, then double it. And she said she actually usually quadrupled it.
Well, I think there you would. In a third world country where the money's not worth anything, I would probably do that. I would follow that rule, but my basic goal is to make sure that I'm getting $1,000 per date, per whatever. I know Ruby's big on the allowance. I'm not doing the allowance until we've established some kind of trust. One way or the other, an allowance opens up the opportunity for either him to get screwed or me to get screwed.
Why are you differentiating between the payments and an allowance?
If he gives me, let's say we're doing 4 dates a month and he gives me $4,000, in my opinion, they're not keen to drop $4,000 right now because I could say, you know what, I don't want to see you again. And now I have $4,000 of his cash.
Yes.
I am not keen on saying, okay, well, I'll give you 4 dates and then you pay me $4,000 at the end of 4 dates. That's not okay. So until we have an established trust factor, you can just give me $1,000 per date for the first 3 months until we're really comfortable with each other. And after that, we'll say $4,000 on the 15th.
And by that, you mean it's a regular amount that you have going into your account, and you have enough trust that he knows you're going to turn up to these dates, and that's when it becomes an allowance. Otherwise, it's after or at the beginning of each date, he just gives you the white envelope.
Something like that, yeah.
Right, okay.
That way everybody's comfortable. I don't want him to feel like I'm trying to get something from him that I shouldn't, or that, might be taking something from him that he's not going to get his money's worth for. And I don't want to feel that way either.
And you don't sort of make them pay more for certain sex acts, for example, or...
I have very broad limitations in terms of sex. So definitely no animals.
Thank God.
I'm not doing anything that's going to require tarping my house. No blood, no piss, nothing like that.
Right.
Totally not interested in any of that. Beyond that, nobody's ever going to gag me. That's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I will always be able to talk. I will always be able to tell you, fuck no.
Yeah.
Or yes, I like that. Thank you. But other than that, I have pretty broad limitations. And so I don't really try to think of it that way. I would possibly change the price depending on how much I did or did not enjoy my time with that person. Although I have a very strong tendency to not even hang out with people I don't like in some way, whether I'm physically attracted to them or I really like them socially. And I'll give you a good example. I went out with somebody on Monday, and...
Do you have a name for them?
I'll just call him Jared, because he was a jewelry designer. There's a place here called Jared, the Gallery of Jewelry. Jared the jeweler.
Sugar daddy number 6, Jared the jeweler.
He was pretty much not for me as soon as he sat down, but I will let you change my mind, because that could happen, and it does happen sometimes. Jared did not change my mind, and here's how he did it. Jared had the audacity to say that Phantom of the Opera was better than Wicked.
Okay, screw Jared.
If you know me at all, you know that no one is entitled to that opinion, because it's just wrong, and I told him.
Oh boy.
And we could both tell, like, as soon as that happened, that it was over. And I almost said, okay, we're done here. But I didn't want to be that rude.
This is the facet of the whole cash thing. The cash is not enough of a factor for you that something as fundamental as your belief in Wicked can be swayed. I mean, like, the money wouldn't make you just smile and kind of go,
No, absolutely not.
What happened to Octocock? You're about to tell me something about his poor old dad being...
Oh, well, he was supposed to come up here last night, and his father had a heart attack, so he obviously canceled, and he was just telling me that his father has, like, really terrible health habits, pretty much eats, like, shit out of a can or out of a box every night, and has very little exercise. So I guess he's critical but stable, and they're taking care of him. But the last time he sent me a payment, I went and bought him all of these really cool dork socks, because he wears, like, dork socks. Like, he'll have on this regular outfit, you know, nice button-down shirt, sport coat, pair of jeans, nice shoes, and, like, bright orange socks. So I went, and he's really into, like, comic books. I don't know why. Or superheroes.
I'm with him there. I'm also a bit
I
of a geek.
love them. But, like, he's, you know, he's a lawyer and whatever. Not that that makes a difference, but he has some high-profile clients and whatever. So I got him superhero socks for grown-ups and some Doctor Who socks. We're both really into that. So I was anxious to give it to him last night, and I didn't get to. I was a little disappointed. And I also think that that's one of the things that separates a really good sugar baby from maybe one who's not so good is paying attention to what they like and not just taking.
So tell me some more of your sugar daddy stories.
Last weekend I was sitting on the beach and I got an email from somebody across the country who will be in my area probably once a month. And he is 56, and I swear to God, he's gorgeous. I was like, whew, alrighty then. He's also brilliant. And he said his company pays him a lot of money to have no life. One of the more interesting reasons, I think, to have a sugar baby is to sort of take that whole dating, getting to know you, setting the terms of what your relationship is going to be like off the table and just move on to the dating part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he is going to let me know when he's going to be in town, but he was very, very cool. Lots of fun. So we'll see how that goes. If his profile is accurate, and that's always a thing, is whether or not they're actually for real. If his profile is accurate, he's worth a lot of money. And then there's one out in Vegas that seems to really like me. He's a little young, but he was drunk texting me last week. He's like, please don't think any less of me, but I think that we should really get to know each other. I was like, I'm not coming to Vegas until you come here. That's just not going to happen.
Unless he pays for your ticket.
No, that's a safety issue. He would pay for me to come to Vegas, like, right now. But I won't go there without him coming here for me to meet him first. I'm not going to go to Vegas and never come home. Like, that's just...
Sure. Do you think he will come and visit you?
I think he might. He went to college here.
Oh.
So it's not totally unfamiliar territory. I would be interested to see if he's serious.
So it sounds like there's a few interested parties, and you're being very cautious about how you and whether you take them on. It's not just a case of raking in the cash and just taking anybody and doing anything that they suggest.
No, I'm very cautious about that. And I think the more that we treat ourselves as a commodity, the better the results will be.
The more value you place on yourself, the more others will.
Yes. Absolutely. Not far from where I live is a very poor neighborhood where there are a lot of women who sell themselves. And I don't think we're any better or worse than those women. I just don't think that they know that they deserve better, that life hasn't taught them that.
Yeah.
And
I suppose it all runs into how you end up making this choice.
Again, we'll discuss this more in our feminism episode.
Somebody asked me once, what are your limitations, or what are the things that you have to have for this to fly for you? And I said, I can't be bored, and there has to be some kind of chemistry. Chemistry does crazy things to people. Like, there could be somebody that I'm just not terribly attracted to right away physically, and then they'll just be something amazing about their personality, and that'll totally change it around for me. And if that happens, game on. But if it's not there, it's not there, and I'm not interested. And it sounds like there's a wealth of women available on the site where cash is king, and have at it. That's not me.
So you'd never pander to someone just because they're giving you the white envelope?
I might pander to their sexual proclivities if I find them interesting. I'm not going to do anything I'm uncomfortable with. Like, if I just find it terribly revolting, I'm not going to do it. But there, like I said, there's very few of those things. I am not going to pander to somebody's opinion. You'll always get my opinion. I'll give you another good example. I was having a conversation just via text with somebody, and I asked him, tell me a little about yourself. And he tried to tell me it was all in the profile, which it wasn't. I said, you're so much more than just a couple of questions. And he rattled off a couple of things. He was Harvard educated. He was this, he was that. He was a staunch Republican conservative. And I said that I was fiercely independent, like right down the middle of the aisle. A couple other volleys back and forth. And he said, well, I think you lost me at politics, but good luck in your search. And I went, really? It's just not worth it to me to follow up on that. But in my mind, and I apologize to you if you're a Republican, I was thinking to myself, well, isn't that just like a Republican to not want a woman to have her own opinions?
Yeah. But I find that incredibly ironic anyway.
I think I mean hypocritical.
Because he's a conservative
Christian,
and yet he's looking for sugar babies. I mean, I bet he's probably married as well,
And I was going to follow up with that also, and I was like, just not worth it to me.
But what does he expect from sugar babies? I mean, come on. Does he expect that a woman who's a sugar baby is going to be a dyed-in-the-wool, pastel-wearing soccer
tennis
mom?
playing, Republican woman with no opinion of her own? I was like,
Madeleine manages to put a world of disdain into her but thinking about it, it sounds like we're being disparaging and flip about conservative women, when in fact we're trying to highlight this dude's hypocrisy. To be clear, in my mind, there's nothing wrong with being a conservative woman or a soccer mom. To each her own. But let's be real, pastels, they're heinous.
It's what we were talking about, though. I suppose there are a lot of women who will say, do, be anything.
That it sort of goes back to that article about dating and power that I had sent you guys.
Yeah.
See our notes for a link to the article Madeleine is talking about. It's a Jezebel article where the journalist discusses a Vanity Fair piece by Nancy Jo Sales about who has the power, men or women, in this modern age of internet dating. Did you get how meta that is, by the way? This is a podcast citing an article dissecting another article. And so the snake eats its tail. One woman interviewed says, it's a contest to see who cares less, and guys win a lot at caring less. It's an interesting analysis of the article, and I'd recommend reading both. But be warned, it's sort of depressing when it comes to the commentary it provides on the state of modern dating.
There's sort of a widespread perception in both the regular world and this sort of sugar baby, sugar daddy world that the men have all the power of choosing. And I think that that's nonsense.
That's not true, yeah. And you definitely seem to have the power. I guess except where it comes to being in love with the Marquis.
Love makes you stupid.
It either gives you the greatest power ever or it takes it away.
I like that Madeleine emphasizes putting a value on herself, though when it comes to seeing herself as a commodity, it feels odd. We're going to have an in-depth discussion about the feminist issues relating to this, but in the meantime, I'm relieved she considers herself a prize for any man, and is therefore less inclined to put herself in a dangerous situation. Last time we talked, she seemed to need the money, and this made me have a few concerns about the choices she might make. The only area in which she doesn't seem to show this concern is with the Marquis. There she hurls herself into anything, and even when the delicate trust they've developed, and which she cherished, had been trampled on, she bent her mind to forgiving him. We can be so plastic and malleable when it comes to love. Here, our Madeleine, tough cookie extraordinaire, crumbles in the face of what she perceives to be her beloved's needs. I don't know why I thought a sugar baby would be, immune to this sort of thing, but I guess I did. What exactly would the Marquis have to do to make her turn away from him for good? I wonder if he knows what he's doing to her and if he cares. More importantly, What will the ultimate cost of this love affair be to Madeleine in the long term? Next week, Ruby advises men on how to be dominant without being a dick about it. Keep listening. This is the Sugar Baby Confessionals.
My mouth is like a sewer. My thoughts turn.
This podcast was produced and edited by me, Sarah Mae Chusin, with help from Beth Keane, Mike Scott, Geraldine Elliott, and Catherine Hoffmeyer. The music you've heard on this podcast comes from Danny Green's albums Obituaries and Laish, as well as Kristin McClement's album The Wild Grips. Find out more about Laish by going to laishmusic.com, that's LAISH music.com, and hear Kristin's work at kristinmcclement.com. Let us know if you're enjoying the podcast by emailing us on fablegazers@gmail.com. Why not join the conversation on Twitter @Fable_gazers. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is very much appreciated and helps to keep us going. Names and details have been changed to protect the anonymity of those involved. This has been a Fable Gazers production.